Welcome to Dodgers Dogs as part of the Dodgers Daily Network. Casey Porter here. Going to be flying solo tonight as I do each and every Sunday. So make sure and get on the horn, get on the text, get on the social media, and tell all of your Dodgers friends to come on over to Dodgers Dogs and let's get a great conversation about Dodgers baseball started, and let's get it going. So got a great show for you tonight. Going to kind of cover some of the things that we're going to talk about. First of all, going to talk about the Saskaki situation. Of course, that signing period does not start until the 15th, and the situation that's put the Dodgers in. I mentioned with Austin the other night, I had some inside information. I really couldn't go into detail about any of that, and I still don't want to, but it's affecting the other international signings as far as some of the Dominican Republic players, some of the Venezuelan players, some of the players from Mexico, all of those other international players, that signing is affecting them. So we're going to cover that. We're going to talk about some of the players that the Dodgers want to sign as far as their international crop this week. And then I was going to talk to Manny Pimentel, who is scouting supervisor there in the DR, but we had it planned and we had to put it off because of this Saskaki situation. Couldn't talk about that really until it became public, and now that it is, so now that the word is out that these guys have been asked to wait until 2026. Now I don't have a problem with saying that, but having said that, don't know if we're still going to have that conversation with Manny Pimentel, who is such a wonderful, wonderful, awesome asset for this Dodgers organization, because if none of these international prospects sign in the 2025 period, we will not have anybody to talk about. And I would not bring on Manny to come and talk about the situation of guys not signing. The only reason I would bring on Manny Pimentel is for him to come on and tell you all about the signings that the Dodgers just made and to promote those guys. Like we did last year, he came on and talked about Emil Morales and all of those guys that the Dodgers signed out of the DR last year. So have that information. Couldn't really go public with it. We found out, at least the public has found out about how the Saskaki situation is affecting the Dodgers. And so that's kind of why I had the wry smile on my face the other night in terms of the Saskaki deal and being confident with the way that is headed. And we'll get into that. So also tonight, we're going to talk to Billy Gasparino and ask him about, just as the hot stove kind of winds down, it stays heated up and it winds down. Going to talk to Billy Gasparino and ask him some questions of what life is like for the vice president of baseball operations in the Dodgers system. That what type of role does he play? What is his life like during this hot stove stage? So going to talk to him and going to ask him some questions. Hope you enjoy that. If you have anything that you want to add in the chat, let's get a great crowd going. And then also we have a great Down on the Farm tonight. Tonight we're going to cover, of course, hey, I want to thank everybody from the bottom of my heart that watched the Eric Swan, the launch angle feature that I released yesterday. I can't tell you, whenever, of course, here's the deal. Everybody wants to hear about the Diego Cartayas and the Dalton Rushings and all of the Josue de Paulas and the Zaire Hopes. And those are all the guys, the headliners. That's what everybody, those are the guys that everybody wants to hear about, right? But whenever I'm able to put out a hot take on Jack Dreyer that was an undrafted free agent, right? And it gets like 3,000 views. And then I'm able to put out a launch angle video on Eric Swan, who was a 4th round draft pick and still really hasn't had really any substantial success on the field, either in professional ball or in college. So it's all about potential. And he's not the name that everybody has heard of. And it has the amount of almost 4,000 downloads. I can't tell you how much I thank everybody for checking that out and how much that means to me whenever that happens. So thank you so much for checking out the Eric Swan feature that I released yesterday. If you have not seen that, Eric does a great job taking you through his mix, his philosophies, his pitch grips. He actually shows you them, and then you get to see him actually do that in action. So I'm going to talk to Billy Gasparino, and we're going to cover all of the international prospects, at least out of the DR. And then we have on the Down the Farm tonight, we're going to cover another young man that I think that you need to know that is massively under the radar. Austin talks about him a lot. Jose Rodriguez had the highest swinging strike percentage of any pitcher in the Dodgers organization. Alex Makarowicz, we're going to talk to him as well. And so we have just a really loaded, going to talk to 4 or 5 different prospects and cover 4 or 5 different prospects on the Down on the Farm segment tonight. But mostly what I want to do is I want to talk to you as we have a great crowd logging in. Daniel Berry Sports Highlight, David Herrera, Gregory, LC, Mike Lopez, and Dodgers Z Showtime fans, Dodgers, Raiders, everything. We have a great crowd logging in. Jeremy Bird, thank you so much for logging into the chat tonight. Benji, thank you so much for that great comment. Big fan of your content. Keep up the great work. Certainly will. Absolutely love covering the Dodgers. So another thing that's floated around, let's start with this. And LC wanted to bring this up right off the bat. Jack Flaherty. Do you think the Dodgers will sign Jack Flaherty? So you would think last year, with the way that Jack Flaherty did, last year was kind of a prove-it situation, and he did. He had a really good year. He had a good performance for the Dodgers. The Dodgers probably don't win the World Series without Jack Flaherty. He was the hot-button pitcher, the best pitcher available at the trade deadline. He did not disappoint for the Dodgers. So you would have thought that Jack Flaherty could have cashed in more than he did. So he went for the long term, for the big enchilada, right? That kind of deal, didn't get it. So now he's kind of coming back to saying, well, I might take a shorter term deal, another prove it type deal. And if you're Jack Flaherty and you want to have another prove it type deal, guess who you probably want to play with? This is why I brought up with Austin on the show Friday night, why I really thought he was a candidate for the Padres. Because if the Dodgers sign Roki Sasaki, I think it's over. They will not get Jack Flaherty. They're not going to get Sasaki and Flaherty. But if Sasaki signs with the Dodgers, I think Jack Flaherty, being a Southern California person, a Southern California guy, signing on a short term. Now, I know that the Padres, we covered this in depth Friday. Most of their contracts have been long contracts to lower the annual value of the contracts to keep their annual payroll as low as possible. But their payroll is going back up this year. And I think Jack Flaherty could be a guy that they really, of course, he is a guy that they could need and use. I think he would be a real option for them. So it's Sasaki or Flaherty. So I've had this question asked a lot. If the Dodgers don't get Sasaki, what do they do next? I think there is a chance they could pivot to Jack Flaherty. I think Jack Flaherty's been flirting with the organization all offseason. I think Jack Flaherty would be willing to make it worth the organization's time in terms of the structure of his contract to make his situation tenable. But I think definitely it's pretty much out in the open now that, in the Angels, yes, that's kind of what I'm talking about, either Shiva, as far as the SoCal, that kind of deal. But I would say this, if you're Jack Flaherty, you just won a World Series last year, I would prefer the Dodgers over the Angels, the Padres over the Angels. And I know you're going to kill me for saying that because you know, guys know how much I don't necessarily hate the Padres. This current version of the Padres just irks me for the type of respect that they're trying to demand without having won a thing. So if I was Jack Flaherty, I would choose the Padres over the Angels because I would feel like I could be a missing link or at least a link to that club that could help them beat the Dodgers and win the World Series. I wouldn't feel that way with the Angels. And then also, if you're Jack Flaherty and you get snubbed by a team like the Dodgers, which is not a snub at all, it's just the fact that they got Blake Snell, Roki Sasaki instead. But you could take that as a snub. You know, some of the best athletes in the world, they find reasons to be motivated. They find reasons to be upset. They find reasons to be pissed at somebody or whatever, and that motivates them to want to be better, right? So Jack Flaherty could easily take the fact that he got snubbed by the Dodgers taking Blake Snell and Roki Sasaki instead of him, go to the Padres and say, hey, look what you missed, Dodgers, and then have a chance to win the World Series. So I would agree with you, Mike, that the Padres, they do have a lot of their hands tied with certain different situations, but I would just keep that one on the radar. I think that is a situation to where I think that is definitely a possibility if Roki Sasaki does not sign with the Dodgers. So Christopher Navarro, good evening, CNAV. If we get Sasaki, we need to move May or Gonsolin to the pen. My preference would be Dustin May with that sinker that he can run up there almost 100 miles an hour. The Dodgers need 40-man roster spots that with guys that have options. Very good, Christopher Navarro. That is an elite comment. Not just 40-man roster spots with guys that have minor league options. We also carry a sacrificial roster spot that you got. That's what I always say. Yes, it's 13 and 13 this year with Shohei Ohtani. It's 14 pitchers and 13 because he acts as both. And because he's a two-way, you're able to have that 14th pitcher, which is why the math works to go to a six-man rotation. And it never did before. But it's really 13 and 12 because the Dodgers like to keep that, as Christopher Navarro CNAV is saying here, that sacrificial up-down spot. Because if you look at the way the Dodgers have done, they even though they haven't had a outright, they have just designated this is a six-man rotation. Pretty much for the last several years, they've had a six-man rotation, and they've done it through manipulating the 10-day IL and then using that up-down train to bring fresh new arms in. We see that all the time. That's pretty much the role that they've given their young guys, their young prospects. And so as CNAV is saying here, I'm going to start calling you CNAV. As CNAV is saying here, the Dodgers have to keep that one spot open for that uptown train. No doubt about it. And then also, before I move on, want to keep all of you in Southern California in the prayers and thoughts of Dodgers Daily. Stay safe. This is a terrible situation. If there's anything I can do to help, please let me know. So I wanted to make sure and get that out there, that the prayers and thoughts are definitely in coming your way to Southern California. So that's a great point there, CNAV. And David Herrera saying Padres are being cheap with King, want to get rid of Cease. How are they going to sign Flaherty? I mean, there's complications to it, no doubt about it, and they are showing signs of having to restrict. But I will say this. My answer to that would be, David, is the fact that when you look at the contracts they signed, they're not good contracts in terms of the long-term situation. So if they don't win a World Series or two during this window, then this has been a complete disaster, because at the back end of some of the contracts they've signed, they're liable to be one of the worst teams in Major League Baseball. So I could see the Padres saying, you know what, we have this window right here. To hell with it. Let's go for broke. Let's go get a Jack Flaherty and let's try to win another World Series. Kind of like they did with Tanner Scott last year and some of the guys, the Luis Arise and signings like that. So, hey, Jeremy Bird, I can't thank you enough. Right off the bat, we got a wonderful super chat from Jeremy Bird of 1999. Thank you so much for that. Cannot tell you how much I appreciate all of the wonderful support that all of you guys give me. And I want to thank you one more time for everybody checking out that Eric Swan feature yesterday. So John Durer, no doubt about it, this Lux trade helps a lot. 7.6 million available rather than 5.1 in the, you're talking about in the, I think you're either talking about the international bonus pool money or just the bonus pool money, all and all. So I want to get now to my next topic, and let's go ahead and get to it right here. And right here, who you're seeing, these are the international signings, not signings, potential signings from the Dominican Republic. Okay, Tyone Serrano, Darrell Morel, right-handed pitcher. And what you're going to notice here, all the right-handed pitchers, Cesar Sanchez, Samuel Savignon, and Shea Romero, Derek Aquino, Axel Perez. These guys are all like 6'6". The lefty here, there's only one lefty. Anuti Almonte, it's like 6 foot. But these are some big, big, big dudes that now they're not, some of them weigh like 160 pounds. So it's not like they're like filled out yet, but still, whenever you sign internationally, you get them at a younger age, a lot of times 16 years old. So the first thing that I wanted to bring up here is the fact that I wanted to explain this is not a draft, okay? It's not like the MLB draft where you draft guys and yes, definitely power pitchers, 100%. Like 6'5", 6'6", guys like that will be power pitchers. Think of a Carlos Duran, something like that. Jose Rodriguez, guys that have the potential with the long bodies to be power pitchers. So I wanted to first say this is not a draft. This is a signing period. So these guys, in essence, are free agents. So it's, it happened in 2025 where the Dodgers, they identified out of the DR, they identified these guys, and there'll be more out of Venezuela. There'll be some maybe from Mexico, like Jose Ramos is out of Panama. So this isn't the complete class of international players by any stretch of the imagination. This is just the guys from the DR. So this is not a draft, so they don't have to sign if they don't like the money figure, right? So what happened with the Dodgers is that they need all the international bonus pool money they can get to sign Roki Sasaki. So in doing so, what they did was they asked all of these international signings to hold off until next year, because if they don't sign any of these guys this year, then that means that they save all that international bonus pool money and they can throw it at Roki Sasaki. This is what I have known for quite a while now. This is what I could not divulge until it went public. When I have sources like that, I would rather have the information than be somebody that's trying to break a story that, again, when the Dodgers want to release that, they'll release it to the people they want to release it to. It'll become public, and then that's when we can cover it. So the big part of this here, and this was the part of it that really I thought, I didn't know, I'm going to say this point blank. I didn't know that they actually were going to ask all of them just to not sign this year and wait till 2026. What I thought was going to happen is probably you're seeing right here, Darrell Morel and Taillon Serrano, they are at the top of this list because they are the high profile signings, right? And so at the very least, I thought Darrell Morel, the Dodgers would lose him if they signed Sasaki, because I thought they would not have the money to offer their high profile guys, Morel being the most high profile, and then maybe a Taillon Serrano. And so the Dodgers indeed did. This was not a surprise whatsoever. Right here, shortstop Darrell Morel, they did lose Morel. Morel decided, I'm not waiting till 2026. I'm not waiting on Roki Sasaki. I don't like this situation and well enough to wait around on it. So Darrell Morel went ahead and signed with another club. I'm not remembering exactly who the club was on the top of my head at this moment. If you can remember the club that Morel signed with, put it in the chat and I can say it out loud. So the Dodgers definitely lost Darrell Morel. That's no doubt about it. And they might lose all of these other international signings because they're signing Roki Sasaki and because they need that international bonus pool money. So I wanted to put that up there on the screen and explain that situation, that it is not a draft. It is a signing period because these guys are free agents. And so if the Dodgers, they can use their international bonus pool money any way that they want, right? And so if they choose to use it for Sasaki and not on anybody else, that's how they choose to use it. Remember, this is a window for this Dodgers club to where, I've said it many times, so a lot of times there's different ways to fill out rosters. You can start at the bottom and you can start filling out the bottom to eventually filter to the top. What the Dodgers are doing right now is they're going, like I explained to Austin the other day, yes, the math is this, yes, the math is that. Here's what I'm telling you the Dodgers are doing, though. They're going and getting the players that they want, that they feel like give them the best chance to win as many World Series as possible, and then they're figuring out the math after that. Now, I've explained that very clearly, and sometimes the math is ugly. Sometimes you got to DFA Diego Cartaya. Sometimes you have to trade Gavin Lux. Sometimes you got to not sign the international signings like a Darrell Morel out of your international signings, out of your international period. So there is cost to everything you do. But the reward to that is the Dodgers are going for the jugular at the major league level, and then they are figuring out how all of the rest of the math works from there. And that is a situation to where Dodgers fans should be nothing but ecstatic that this front office is saying to hell with it. They're going for the jugular. I know the math is ugly. I don't even know what the math looks like. We'll figure it out, but let's go get Saskaki. I don't know what the math is going to look like, but let's go get Blake Snell. I don't know what the math is going to look like, but let's get Shohei Ohtani, Tyler Glasnow, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Jack Flaherty, Tommy Edman, and Michael Kopech, right? And so that's where the Dodgers are at. And so if you want the Dodgers to be in win now mode, if you want them to stay in win now mode, then somebody like me or anybody else, we can't be negative or upset whenever a Diego Cartaya gets DFA'd, whenever a Gavin Lux gets traded, or when the news comes out that the Dodgers lose a Darrell Morel in their international crop, who's a talented shortstop, because of the Roki Sasaki situation. It is what it is. It is a byproduct of something that is great, and that is that the Dodgers are 100% trying to win as many World Series as they possibly can. And what else would anybody want? Again, I'm going to say it again, and I'm a guy who covers prospects. But why do we do any of this if it's not to win a World Series? So that's the situation with the international signings. David Herrera is saying he thinks the Dodgers are going to offer Tanner Scott $80 million for 5 years. That would be way, way, way out of brand for the Dodgers to go sign, as good as Tanner Scott is, to sign a reliever to a 5-year contract at $80 million. Way out of brand for the Dodgers. So, hey, David, I'm not saying it won't happen, but I'm saying if it does, that is a out of brand move, I think, that it would be for the Dodgers. So, hey, Mr. Seabad, no signings from Venezuela. No, I'm not saying that, Mr. Seabad. These were just the DR signings. I actually have not studied the signings from anywhere else. I don't know if you're saying there aren't, or if you're saying that because of what I put up on the screen. The only international signings I've studied so far are the ones from the DR, because Manny Pimentel, I've communicated with him, who is the scouting supervisor in the DR. So I really don't have a whole lot of information in terms of who the Dodgers signed out of Venezuela, if it is anybody. I actually will do some research on that. I do know a couple of scouts in the system for the Dodgers that are in Venezuela, and I will actually get on that JOB, but that's just with the fact that the period was last month and they don't sign until the 15th. That's just not, I only have a certain amount of time, and researching guys that might not end up signing to begin with. It's just not something I've done yet. So let me dive into that, and we will get back into that as far as any of the other guys that aren't from the DR. So definitely, Jay, this is a rough situation for the Dodgers international guys, no doubt about it. But again, the goal is to win a World Series, and as many as you possibly can. And to do that, the Dodgers are going for the jugular and feel like that getting a Roki Sasaki is the way to do that. So, okay, that's the conversation I wanted to get in there. So now what we're going to do, we're going to transfer, as we've talked about all this hot stove stuff, all of the way the Dodgers are going for the jugular, the way the Dodgers are filling out this major league roster to win as many World Series as they possibly can. What I want to do now is I want to bring back in my conversation with Billy Gasparino and just kind of freshen you back up on how the front office works and how these just rock stars like Billy G, how they operate behind the scenes, and how we get to the point where we are, where the Dodgers have built both the best roster, the smartest roster, and one of the best farm systems in the game. So with that, here's Billy Gasparino. So tell us what you were doing during the World Series, how you celebrated. I mean, I know you celebrate like it's your job and that kind of like a coach would, but then you probably also celebrate as a fan too. So how does that work for somebody like you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I become more fan mode than everything. I mean, so much of it is already kind of set, and our coaching staff, they've been together all year, and they're just so dialed into like the everyday nature of what goes on. And so, maybe a suggestion here or there, but for the most part, I'm a fan, and I'm rooting hard and want it as much as anyone. So that's kind of how I lived it. I did travel with the team this year. So I was in New York twice. I was in San Diego. Got to live it a little bit more closely this time because we didn't have COVID. And pretty special moment. My family was with me in New York, and we got to be on the field, and it just probably even more incredible than I thought it would be.
So can you kind of take us through, from a general perspective, what your day-to-day is like as the VP of baseball operations?
Yeah, I mean, it's very seasonal. So, once I get through the February through July crunch of the draft, which is that day-to-day is very different than now. That day-to-day is, airplane, car rides, phone calls, players seen, reports written, tracking everything that's going on in amateur baseball. To like today, would be more like a couple hours in the morning with potential trades, trying to figure out our upcoming roster, working on some free agents and kind of, sharing thoughts with our group, and becomes a little more reacting to what the situation calls for and kind of how the off season progresses.
Well, you had a pretty big free agent acquisition last year, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, we've been lucky. Like last year's offseason was probably like an A+ with the Ohtani, Yamamoto, Teoscar Hernandez. You look back and you kind of thought it would be special, and then it actually kind of like comes to fruition. This year it's trying to get a few of those guys back. It's trying to add a few more pieces. Our ownership group, it sounds like they're almost hungrier than ever to keep winning. Yeah. So we got a lot of resources and a lot of ways to acquire talent, and we're pretty lucky in that way.
Dave Roberts finally got the credit that he's always deserved. I just found that to be super exciting.
Yeah, I was too. I mean, to give you some more perspective, like you could tell, like I think there's some pressure building.
Oh yeah.
When you're supposed to have the best team or one of the best teams every year, and you don't win it all, which is an extremely like hard goal task. And then it just builds and builds. So I am too. I mean, I think he treats our players so well, and he handles so many different things coming at him, and he does it with a smile and an ease, and it's just good to see like a good guy get rewarded. And I'm with you. That was as special as anything, just seeing the look on his face and us winning and how excited he was.
Of course, you signed Ohtani and Glass now and Teo and those guys. But other than that, was there anything that made this year different than the rest that got us over the hump?
No, that's the one thing I'm convinced of. Like I can't, and I hope we talk again. I can't tell you when we're going to win in the playoffs or not. I have no idea. I mean, and I think anyone who can predict it is foolish, because like I wasn't sure. I mean, if you remember, like Freddie had just gotten hurt. Was he even going to play? Yeah. Our pitching seemed to be kind of like thin, and how are we going to make this like all work? We didn't have like your traditional like 3 power or 4 powerhouse starters. Walker Buehler wasn't throwing that well at the time. There are just so many like what ifs, and this is not trending well. And then all of a sudden it just all came together, and it became somewhat magical once we kind of like broke through with the Padres. So, and then there's been other years where I thought for sure we had the best team, and we lost in the first round.
Did finally getting past the Padres, especially the way it happened, did it feel like a monkey jumped off everybody's backs?
I think so, especially because like we knew they were really good, and you know, I think we knew maybe for the first time we had a little doubt creep in, and I think breaking through that gave us a renewed sense of confidence. That's at least what I felt, but it was pretty exciting. They had a really good club.
So the pocketbook definitely opens up, but to me, where the Dodgers really make all the most of their hay is on the margins. The guys you go get out of the bullpens that aren't super expensive, maybe the prospects that you know which ones to trade, which ones to bring up, the Tommy Edmonds, those kind of guys. So how are the Dodgers so good on all those margins like that?
That's a great question and point. I think we spend a lot of time thinking about it. The one thing I'll give our guys credit, and it starts with Andrew and Brennan Gomes, like they just don't ever rest. There's no, they don't ever get complacent. Every player, they put a meaningful time in every situation. They try to help. Even the smallest ones where you're like, how could that matter to those guys? It does. And they kind of lead the charge with that. And so you sooner or later, you kind of adopt that mentality a little bit. And so the smallest of trades, the least important 40-man decisions, whatever you think is probably doesn't matter, it matters to those guys. And I think that's a big part of it.
One thing that seems very impressive about the way the Dodgers do is that everybody has an opinion. Everybody's opinion is super valued, but then everybody's also on the same page too, right? So can you take us through that collaborative process of how you come up with decisions?
Yeah, I mean, it starts, we just don't have very black and white boundaries. So I think that starts it. And so there's no problem for me calling someone outside our department or asking a question. And a lot of it's no egos. And so you're able just to cross boundaries and have interactions and conversations that just maybe don't happen everywhere. And so we're pretty fortunate. Almost every decision brings in, our QA group or a BSI group or coaching or player development or scout, and you just get so many different opinions and blend them together, and it just becomes what we do on every day, And so I don't even really think about it anymore. It just kind of happens. Pretty seamless.
Yeah, you guys have created a system. I get to see this firsthand, where all of your minor league pitching coaches, they've all coached together, and the handoffs from one guy to the next when you promote them, absolutely seamless. Same with your hitting coaches, same with your managers. So how have you created that system at the minor league level where it's just so fluent?
Yeah, I think a lot of times we get a lot of, which we should, like, I think we're a progressive group and we have a lot of new age tech toys and ideas and analytics, but I always say it's the people. Like, it's probably the most under talked about group of we have like really good people, and they're smart, but they're not afraid to like pass off or trust. And so it really comes down to those things. And we've been able to keep our core group of guys here for a while, and I think that helps. So there's some continuity, and then there's just a lot of pride to keep doing it again and again. We love development and scouting, and I know, like you said, like the Otanis and the other stuff gets the headlines, but so much of what we do has been through trades or other ways of creating prospects and value and homegrown guys. That's what we're probably most proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. So the everyday lineup part of things, how much collaborative effort is the everyday lineup? And then I know Dave has autonomy on the in-game decisions, no doubt, but how much of that is already talked about before the game starts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, that's a great question. I think it's like, it's talked about a lot from a lot of different people, but Dave writes the lineup. And I think anyone who questions that should come see it and how it works. There's always conversations. There's always a lot of collaboration, but ultimately he has a pretty good idea of what he wants to do. He's very good at taking in information. I think he trusts his coaching staff a ton. So when you see those guys interact and how much influence they have on them, it kind of all makes sense of how it gets put together, and sometimes unfairly criticized, like he's not calling the shots, which is just not true, And I think I think it's been pretty neat from my end to watch it evolve, and even this last year be a little closer to it. I think he does a really good job at it. Can you speak to the culture and how important that is? Yeah, I mean, I've learned a lot from it because I probably wasn't used to it when I came over. The amount of pride those guys take in their day-to-day work, the consistency of it. Like if you've been around Henny or Shoe, and just the everyday consistency of it, and a little bit of more, which I think is maybe called more new age, just the positivity they bring to everything they do. And so the players believe it. And then you start to get guys who actually can believe they can do it. And then that's when you see these results. And sure, like talented baseball minds and all the other stuff that a lot of other places have, but the allow the players to be themselves and be positive with them and give them belief is like nowhere else I've been.
Dodgers are widely renowned as one of the most analytical organizations in any sport, not just baseball. So can you speak to how important that is? Yeah, we just have a ton of tools at our disposal. It probably leads to more, it probably leads to like a deeper analysis. You just don't get anything no stone unturned almost. And it's ready at your fingertips. You can be efficient with it. And you can just have a deeper understanding of what's going on. And I think, our group, or Andrew and Brandon, are just great at like sorting through that and helping filter through what matters and doesn't, and then really being able to pick out and what each situation calls for. So again, I think it gets a lot of street media credit, and I would still point to the people we have here are the keys to it all. Andrew Freeman, if you go to spring training, you'll see him in the backfield because he loves his prospects. He will know the very last prospect down to the one that nobody else will know. He will know who he is. He loves spending time in that backfield. I know you do too. What's it like working with Andrew Freeman? So there you have it. There's my conversation. I actually cut that off a little bit too soon, but that's my conversation with Billy Gasparino. Before we get into a little bit of kind of how that ties into what we're talking about tonight, wanted to get into a wonderful super chat from CNAB, my man Christopher Navarro, absolute rock star. Thank you, Casey, Austin, Clint Pacias, Alana DMAC for doing these shows. It's a break from the fire news here in Los Angeles. Be safe, LA residents. 15 miles away from Malibu. Safe from Redondo Beach, California. It's time for Dodgers baseball. I can't wait till that's the case. Christopher Navarro, again, you are an absolute rock star. Can't thank you enough for that wonderful super chat. So thank you. All right, so some things that Billy Gasparino said there, and if anybody would know, he would know, right? One is that you needed to pick out of that is that the ownership group is as hungry as ever to continue to win world championships. So this ball is not ever going to stop rolling. This is an ownership group that wants to win, and they want to continue winning. That was one of the things as part of, he just point blank said that, and we're seeing that as they go get the guys that they feel like they need. If they feel like they have a need, so far it's been a slam dunk. The Dodgers have fulfilled all of their needs. Now, will they fulfill every single want? Nobody usually ever does that, and so we'll see how that goes, but they do fill out all their needs plus some, and this is an ownership group that is as hungry for as ever. The other thing that you need to take out of what he said there, the collaboration. So you talk about Andrew Freeman, Brandon Gomes, Billy Gasparino, all the minor league coaches, the scouts, both on the pro side and the amateur side. This is an organization that collaborates as good as anyone. And then also, Billy Gasparino's worked like in the Padres system. He's worked in different situations and different systems. So that collaboration effort where there is absolutely no ego, that's created such a positive culture. And when I say positive, I mean actions that lead to positive outcomes, right? So being positive isn't telling somebody that oh, it's okay, it's all right, Johnny or Susie or whoever you may be, when things aren't. That's not being positive, because to me, that's an action that's going to lead to a negative outcome. Any action towards a human being that leads to a positive outcome, to me, that is being positive. Sometimes that might mean not being as nice to somebody as you need to be. If you feel like you need to challenge somebody to get a positive outcome, now obviously you need to have respect for other human beings at all times. That goes unsaid. But sometimes being positive means being not nice to somebody because that person needs somebody to give them some tough love at that moment to create a positive outcome, right? So when I say positive, I don't just mean like, hey, yay, cheerleading type stuff. I mean an environment that creates positive outcomes. And to do that through collaboration, you need to have no egos. Billy Gasparino is one of the greatest players in Oklahoma State history, in a illustrious history of baseball there. This guy could easily have an ego, right? Andrew Freeman just went and got Tommy freaking Edmond, and everybody's like, what the hell are you talking about here? Or what are we doing? And he ended up being an instrumental piece to winning the World Series. He could be puffing his chest right now. Same with Brandon Gomes, played AAA baseball. Same with all the pitching coaches. You know, the Dodgers went to 2 pitching coaches at the minor league level. It would be easy for them to have egos and fight with each other and want to be the credit for it. That doesn't happen. So to get out of that conversation, the collaborative effort is one of the most positive situations and creates some of the most positive outcomes. And it is the reason why not only do the Dodgers go get the Shohei Ohtanis, the ownership group is why you get the Shohei Ohtanis, because they're hungry to win. They're willing to go get the pocketbook if the collaboration group explains to them why. But it's the collaboration group that goes and gets all the guys on the margins. And without one or the other, I don't think the Dodgers are nearly as good as they are. So I think that's a big one there. And then the other one is, I found it interesting that Dodgers fans, and I'm one of them, I'm definitely right in the middle of that, maybe at the top of the list, bitch and moan about not winning world championships. Well, he told you right there, there is one of the brightest young administrators in baseball, front office people in baseball, right there, that told you point blank, if you can tell me that you know exactly how to build a roster that's going to guarantee to win a World Series in baseball, I think you're being foolish to say that. Told you point blank. Baseball has more variables than any other sport, and because of that, you go do your best, you build the best roster with the most amount of talent you have, and then you hope for the best. So I thoroughly enjoyed that conversation with Billy Gasparino. I thank him so much for being so upfront and honest, and actually not giving us just front office talk, actually giving us nitty gritties that we can go by and actually dive into. And so thank you to Billy Gasparino. I hope you enjoyed that. So, hey, we have another wonderful super chat, $5 from the best social media handle on earth, Vin 1988. Casey, we want that hat. Where can we get one? Can you sign mine? Yes, I do have some hats. If you want a hat, just let me know. I can send you one, and we can go from there. We'll work out the details as far as how much they cost. And if we have a whole bunch of orders, I can order as many of these hats as we possibly can. And then, yes, Mr. Classic is saying I want an Oklahoma City Comets hat. Now, going to get that. Hopefully going to talk to Alex Freeman as well in terms of the AAA play-by-play voice for Oklahoma City. And we're going to talk all about the process going back to when the Oklahoma City used to be the 89ers, why that wasn't chosen, that kind of deal, why the Comets was chosen. There's a great process behind all of it. So I can't wait to talk to Alex Freeman about that. Cole, hey, Casey, why is it okay for teams to have these agreements with those international kids prior to the signing window, but it was apparently wrong for Roki? Seems hypocritical. That's because of the posting in the KBO. These guys are not posted in the KBO, right? They don't have contracts with another professional league that they're having to get out of to get posted to play in Major League Baseball. These are kids that don't have, they're just free agents, right? So they just literally are free agents that there's a little extra money that major league teams are given because there's international bonus pool money to go get them. And that is a that is an attempt by the major leagues to make Major League Baseball more of an international sport, and it definitely has worked. So, hey, Hep C, good evening. Thank you so much for joining. Teams and fans only complain because Saskaki is Major League ready and can be a stud day one. Those 16-year-olds they have prearranged deal are 6 years away, yes, and they are free agents that don't have contracts with any other professional team. Elis Shiba, I'm still interested in Dodgers signing Kike. Is that a possibility? Roki Sasaki would put them at 40, plus it also makes a very difficult situation on the 26th. And so I think for the Dodgers to get Kike, they would have to come up with another move. They would have to trade somebody else I think they would have to DFA Chris Taylor, I think, to make it work with Kike, or take somebody else off of the 40-man roster that actually has minor league options. So the question is, James Outman, of course, he's making $800,000 a year. And why wouldn't it be somebody like that? Is because this guy, James Outman, has minor league options. And so that solves your 40-man problem situation. You can see his salary right here. That solves your 40-man situation, but that does not at all solve your 26-man rotation. So to go get a Kike Hernandez who doesn't have minor league options, and to get rid of a James Outman in his stead, in his place, that does have minor league options, that does not work from a mathematical perspective on the 26-man roster. So that's why it's a little bit more complicated. So to answer your question, Elis Shiva, I think probably to get Kike, it's going to take another move, which I think the Dodgers are very willing to do. So, I mean, would the Dodgers DFA Chris Taylor? That would be the easiest. I say easiest, not easiest, but that would be the cleanest way to do it. So a straight up trade for Kike and Chris Taylor, but to have Chris Taylor and Kike Hernandez on the same roster would be very difficult math for the Dodgers to try to figure out. So, hey, what a great crowd we have in the chat. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. CNAV says closer by committee. Lots of big arms with good stuff out there, especially if Dustin May joins the pen. I'm with you on that. I like, of course, the way it sits. Dustin May, Tony Gonsolin would be the 5th and 6th starters. So we'll have to see how that goes. Hey, J.O., Dodgers are going to lose Billy Gasparino, the young man we just talked about. At some point, he's going to be a GM because he actually is an absolute rock star. He was a great player. He's very humble. He's a sweet human being. I will say this, though. He loves his life in Southern California. Matter of fact, his son went to the University of Texas, and so his son grew up in Southern California. We're hoping that we were going to get his son to Oklahoma State. Great player, freshman there for the University of Texas. So I think there is a chance the Dodgers could keep Billy Gasparino because he likes where he's living right now and makes a pretty good living. Hey, Cole, Dodgers had like $2 million left over in 2024. They were hoping that Roki would be posted. During that period, they lost that money because he was posted in 2025, and that is a use it or lose it. And CNAV is saying Seattle. He thinks Seattle is the competition for Roki Sasaki. We'll see. It's going to be interesting. And so for all of you out there that are fatigued by this Roki Sasaki situation, don't be. This is not a Sasaki or his agent type deal. The signing period doesn't even open until the 15th. So it couldn't even happen until then. This is a young man that's taking advantage of maybe the one window that he's going to get to set up himself, his kids, his grandkids, and all this for life. I talked to, this week, we're going to release interviews with Griffin Lockwood Powell. We're going to release an interview with Dylan Campbell, and then also Peyton Martin. You're going to hear point blank from Griffin Lockwood Powell, who's been in minor league baseball for a while now. This is high stakes for these guys. When they finally do get a chance, they might only have one chance to cash in. So when like a Jack Flaherty or whoever it may be tries to take advantage of their one or even their last window, like a Teo Hernandez, I kept saying that. I have no issues whatsoever with the players cashing in because once they're done, man, they're done. And once that window is over, hey, the math is out there. Once you turn about age 32, unless you're like a Hall of Fame type talent and player, then the math isn't there for you to cash in again. So I have zero issues with somebody like Roki Sasaki trying to max out what he can get, because you never know if this opportunity is going to come around again. And we have some questions. Hey, San Diego's a mess. Why would any pitcher want to go there? And my answer to that would be because I think you can sign a good contract with them and then also have a chance to win a World Series. I don't like San Diego, but the Dodgers, I'm going to say this, they scared the hell out of me last year. When it was game 4 and the Dodgers were throwing out a bullpen game, you can't tell me that you were confident that the Dodgers were going to beat the Padres. Billy Gasparino wasn't, and rightfully so. I mean, he even said that the confidence had maybe been shaken a little bit. So the Padres are formidable. They're very good. And if you add Jack Flaherty to that, they become even better. So my comment back to that, why would somebody like Jack Flaherty sign with the Padres, is because they are the team that actually could give him a chance to do what he did last year, which is win another World Series. So David Harris says, yes, Dodger Stadium is coming along real well. Yeah, you would think that would be a situation that will be playable by day one. And then Chris says, I think the Dodgers might trade somebody to get more international free agent money. That could be the case. We'll see how that goes. I don't know how all that would work, but I would think they would trade somebody to clear up a spot for a Kike Hernandez type situation. Ela Shiva, my feeling is that for 2025, Mookie won't be the everyday shortstop, but the official Dodger statement is that. I've been saying that for a long time now, that I think that probably that stance was to raise the value of Gavin Lux, and then also to that, number one, and then also that's the situation as of right now, but situations are fluid and they change. So, hey, I want you to stick around, make sure and stick around and check out our Down on the Farm segment, because I'm super excited about this. Again, on this segment tonight, we've got Jose Rodriguez. We're also going to talk about Jack Dreyer, the Maytag. We're going to talk about Cameron Decker, one of the best young sluggers in the game. Cameron Decker had a 10 RBI game. Matter of fact, he actually set the franchise record for Rancho Cucamonga in RBIs in one game. And then a young prospect that you need to know about that's hit 99 miles an hour, Alex Makarowicz, a wonderful young pitcher. So let's get to that. Let's not waste any more time. This is one that I really enjoyed because Jose does a wonderful job explaining why he's starting to have so much success. I always love talking about Jack Dreyer anytime we can. And I'm telling you, Cameron Decker, somebody you need to put on your radar, because this dude's absolutely big time. And Alex Makarowicz has the potential to be big time. The stats wouldn't say it right now because he hasn't thrown enough strikes to this point. But this is a dude with a lightning bolt for an arm. So with that, let's not waste more time. Let's get right to it. Please stick around because you know this is my favorite part of the show. Let's take a trip down on the farm. So you had a 3.38 ERA last year, a whip of 116. Talk about the year you had and the momentum you built.
I had never imagined having a year like this, but it was awesome because I've always been a reliever before, and this year, like, the Dodgers wanted me to do this transition to the starting role, and I maybe didn't have like a lot of starts, but all my outings were like in that kind of role, and having like being a piggyback or start sometimes and getting bulk innings. And I mean, it was awesome. I love pitching like this. I think I've always had like a good strike percentage and strikeout to walk rate ratio. And I think since I proved that in the last years, that's why they took the decision to put me in this role. I think we have worked a lot with the pitching staff, with like mentality and execution of the pitches. But something that stands out for me, at least, is like the deception on my mechanics and how far I release the ball. I have a pretty good extension, and And also like since last year, I started adding a lot more pitches. I used to throw back in 2022. I used to throw just fastball and slider, and since then I've been adding changeup, curveball, cutter, sinker. So that also plays.
Yeah. So you mentioned you have a sinker, your two seam there, and a four seam. Can you tell us what your hit and sit velos were last year?
For the four seam, I topped 297, and I've been sitting 92 to 95. Also, like getting used to the starting role, it has also like made me be a little bit down in my average, but we're working on that for the next years.
Yeah.
And for the two seam, I like it sits around 92 to 93, but I've topped it at 95. Well, mostly with my four seam and two seam, I use the four seam to get to the top of the zone, and two seam I will use it to get like in and down for the righties, and most of the time to get ahead on the count, or if I want to like just get a weak contact, that'll play really good.
So your slider was definitely your strikeout pitch. I mean, you upped your usage of your slider quite a bit last year. There was times to where you're throwing your slider as much or more than your fastball, right? So talk about that slider pitch and how it got so good last year.
Right now I really think that I feel like my nastiest pitch right now is my changeup.
Okay.
But I will say that my best pitch is my slider, because my slider is a gyro slider or a bullet slider. So it's easier for me to get it for a strike or throw it for a strikeout pitch. And since it's at the release, it looks a lot like my fastball. It will play it. That's why it gets so much swing miss. I feel like with that kind of slider, I can be way more aggressive than with other pitches. Changeup, actually this year was the year that it changed the most, because I used to throw it like kind of flat, and I started doing some changes in my grips, and I now throw like what they call it kick change, and it took more horizontal movement. It dropped a lot more. And it's been like this year it played really well also, mostly against lefties. Still against righties has been kind of a little bit harder for me, but the times I get into the zone or it's a good pitch, it will also play well. And well, my curveball, it's been like the pitch I'm struggling a little bit more. I didn't throw it that much this year, and I'm working on that this offseason to add it more during the games and expand my arsenal.
So would the curveball be more of a strikeout pitch, or would it be more like a steal a strike pitch?
Well, this year, the times I use it the most for strikeout.
Yeah.
But I'm working on to use it next year more as a first pitch strike, something like that. So I can like change the sides of the batter more.
The game in early August, I think it's like August 3rd, 10 RBIs, 6 hits. The 10 RBIs was a franchise record for the Quakes. I think Kenny George that day had 5 hits, and he was like nipping at your heels. You guys were going back and forth. Take us through that day.
Yeah, it was a fun day for sure. I think however long I play this game, I'm going to remember that night forever. It was really cool. And, having Kendall in front of me, watching him do what he was doing, it wasn't really in my mind. It was kind of just another game and trying to have good at-bats. And by that last one, I kind of just blacked out. I don't really remember anything. But no, it's really a credit to my teammates, too, to be able to have the opportunity with that many guys on base. I mean, you only get so many opportunities to have that. So I think it's a big credit to them to even give me that chance to do it. Yeah, I think going into my senior year, I was really comfortable with where my swing was. So it was more like, how can I get the most out of my approach? and what I'm looking to do each at bat. And honestly, like I almost had to think right field foul pole because obviously here in Indiana, like the arms aren't amazing. You're anywhere from like 80 to one game you might be 92, but it's pretty rare. Like you're kind of all over the place. So having that approach, thinking right center, honestly keeps me in the zone for a longer period of time and is able to keep me on the off speed pitches, to hit them out to left field or wherever. I had a lot of walks my senior year, which like, honestly, you would think it'd be frustrating, but honestly, I was fine with it because it's setting my teammates up behind me. We had a good hitting squad, so it didn't really bother me. But yeah, I think that's something I can even grow on to going forward. You've seen with the Dodgers, in the World Series, I think obviously pitching helps, hitting helps, but like having that plate discipline makes the job a lot tougher for those pitchers. And you see how well they do. I think they led the league in it. So having that going forward is definitely a key focus for me.
This guy is special. He's elite in I don't know how many different ways. And he's about 94, 95 right now. He thinks eventually he'll sit at 96. But this is a young man that is from Johnston, Iowa. He set an all-time Iowa High School Activities Association record in a state championship game with 13 strikeouts. His dad, Steve Dreyer, actually played for the Oklahoma City 89ers. My hat right here. He played on one of the very last teams that were called the Oklahoma City 89ers because as soon as they moved to Bricktown in 1998, they changed their name to the Red Hawks. So his dad, Steve Dreyer, may have played on the very last Oklahoma City 89ers team, and he actually pitched in the major leagues, and I believe, I always get this story wrong, I think he was, he pitched after Nolan Ryan, so, something after a strike. I can't remember the exact story behind it, but he came in after Nolan Ryan for the Rangers, so he pitched at the major league level. So this is a young man in Jack Dreyer that will pitch in the major leagues. This is a young man in Jack Dreyer that will be a fantastic pitcher at the major league level. And this is a young man that continues to get better. So why maybe haven't you heard more of him? Well, that's because he had Tommy John surgery in 2019. Actually, in 2019, he had a separate injury, and then 2020. So he had to stop his career in Iowa over, I can't remember the exact injury. And then 2020, you have COVID. 2021, he has Tommy John. So basically, when he started pitching, not this last season, but in 2023, when he burst onto the scene at Great Lakes, he had not pitched in live games much at all since his freshman year at Iowa. And so, I mean, you couldn't tell. I mean, it was just like, wow. I mean, so the competitive element to this young man is insane. The composure to this young man is insane. The stuff is absolutely fantastic. That slider that you saw right there is awesome. The way that he's able to dot his fastball. And then beyond all that, Austin, he's one of the smartest human beings, one of the most analytical human beings that I have ever seen in my life. And he already knows how he wants to set a hitter up 2 or 3 batters ahead. So this guy has everything it takes to be a great major leaguer.
To what he did last season, which last season, especially his April through August, right up until about the last month, which there was just a couple of outings that were a little bit rougher towards the end, numbers-wise, was absolutely insane. His entire cumulative season, keeping in mind some of the rougher outings that he had later in the season, 2.20 ERA combined between Tulsa and Oklahoma City, which he had about 10 outings in Tulsa before they were like, yeah, we got to move this guy to Oklahoma City immediately. 2.20 ERA, a 2.75 FIP, a 3.42 xFIP. One of the more impressive numbers, though, is his 26.4 strikeouts minus walk percentage. That just take your strikeout percentage, subtract it from your walk percentage. That was best in the Dodgers organization last year for pitchers who pitched 40 innings or more. Just absolutely insane with what he's able to do. Struck out about 32% of hitters, but walked about 5%.
What's been the progression in the velo bump?
So I mean, obviously, going to school did a lot of good for me. Just to like gain weight, gain strength, become a man, kind of like you said. But yeah, so my freshman year, I think I got up to like 92 or 93. And then sophomore year is a little bit more. I would maybe grab a 4. And then really the biggest jump was the summer going into my junior year. I touched like 96 or 97 in a bullpen. And then I was like, okay, like something's like clicking here. And, just going through the season, all the mechanical stuff kind of stuck. And I was able to kind of find my groove. And I would be like 93 to 95 for the most part. But yeah, so it was the normal kind of, there was no like crazy, like big jump. Like it kind of just slowly came together.
Rumor has it you've hit the 9.
Yeah. This year I've hit it once or twice, but yeah, I've done it at the place I work out at too, which I think we'll talk about. But yeah, so I was lucky enough to hit a couple of 99s this year.
A lot of people think there's still a lot of room to grow in velo and just in all sorts of ways in your game. So can you talk to that part of it?
Yeah, 100%. I would say that, so while I've had great opportunities, I don't think that I've pitched as much when it comes to innings and experience and stuff as much as a lot of guys that are maybe my age or at our level or whatever. So I think that there's still a lot of learning when it comes to the art of pitching. I know how to, I figured out how to throw hard and how to throw great, good stuff. And so now it's kind of just putting it all together in a game format and deploying it against hitters. So I think that's where my biggest learning curve is. And I definitely got punched in the mouth a few times this year, but I think coming back next year, I'm going to be able to take those experiences and kind of build on them and grow from them and begin to find who I am as a pitcher. I really didn't throw a true breaking ball in college.
Okay.
I had a changeup that I would throw occasionally, but I threw a lot of fastballs and I got away with it. But obviously, as you go higher levels, doesn't matter how good a pitch is, it's going to get hit. Mm-hmm. So that was the first step. Was we added a slider, and eventually we ended up adding a curveball too, which has been kind of my favorite of the two. The curveball's been, especially playing in the fall league, I threw it a ton, got really comfortable throwing it in any count. So I think going into next year, it's going to be a big pitch for me. And then, and then we're messing with the changeup. But mechanically, there was a couple things, but the Dodgers, I would say, do a great job of, they expose you to things and have you do things, but it's not clear to you what exactly it is that they're trying to do. So I'm just out there making different throws and doing stuff. And then after a few weeks, the mechanics have tweaked, but without me having to consciously think about it or do anything about it. So yeah, they made some adjustments. It wasn't any crazy overhaul or anything, but yeah. So, I mean, it showed immediately. The hardest I had thrown was 96 in college, and I grabbed a 99 in the instructs. So yeah, I mean, they're obviously great at what they do.
That balance between having that nasty stuff that can get all that swing and miss while also being able to keep it in the strike zone enough to actually make it effective. It doesn't matter how nasty your stuff is. If it's not a strike, it doesn't matter, especially the levels you go up. So talk about that balance. Yeah,
100%. It was definitely something that I learned a lot about this year. And yeah, I mean, you got to be in the zone to get to the punch out stuff. And so if you're not able to get ahead early and get to 0-2, 1-2 counts where you're just leverage counts, you're never going to be able to use the great stuff that you have to your advantage. Yeah. So that's definitely something, obviously, the Dodgers are very, they harp on a lot, is just getting ahead and staying ahead and allowing yourself to get into counts where you can use the plus stuff. And yeah, I mean, that's something that I'm going to focus on a lot coming into next year, is just being able to be in the zone at a higher clip, obviously, is just the key. So the stuff's never going to hold me back. It's just got to get in the zone and control it a little bit better. I would say that the things I need to work on the most are pretty glaring. I mean, it's commanding the zone at a higher level. And if I can do that, I think that I've got a pretty good shot. Obviously the metrics are good. I throw some good pitches. So, I think that the consistency with which I bring myself to the field every day is something that would benefit or will benefit me one day. But yeah, I mean, obviously just improving the obvious, the easy stuff, it's simple, but not easy. But yeah, just getting better at the little things and everything will come together hopefully. And we'll see how the cards fall.